David Beckham seems to have had the perfect life, but one moment of madness on the football pitch nearly cost him everything. The British take their soccer, or football, very seriously. Back in 1998, David Beckham was one of the country's rising stars, so all of England felt he personally let them down in the World Cup round against Argentina. Beckham received a red card and was thrown out of the match for lashing out at Argentine midfielder Diego Simeone.
I remember Diego putting his hand on the back of my head, even rubbing it.
Playing a man down, England went on to lose in penalty shootouts. Beckham spoke about the aftermath in his Netflix documentary, saying, "To walk down the street and see people look at you in a certain way, spit at you, abuse you, come up to your face and say some of the things that they said, that's difficult. The whole country hated me." The player called the red card incident, quote, "a stupid mistake that changed my life." Beckham eventually redeemed himself in the eyes of his country by scoring an equaliser against Greece to qualify for the 2002 World Cup. He said, "That was the moment that England supporters forgave me for what had happened a few years before." It was a hard road to get to that moment of forgiveness, though. The backlash against David Beckham and his wife, Victoria, following the 1998 World Cup loss was so severe that the couple feared for their safety. Beckham issued an apology shortly after the match, saying, "This is, without doubt, the worst moment of my career. I will always regret my actions." However, the criticism didn't stop. Media outlets, people on the street, you name it, they all publicly blasted the soccer pro and even threatened his life. The hatred was so strong that someone actually mailed bullets to the office of Manchester United, his professional club. During this time, Victoria Beckham learned she was pregnant with their first child. When she gave birth to Brooklyn Beckham in March 1999, David was terrified. In the documentary, Beckham, he recalled coming home from the hospital and fearing for the baby's safety. That night, Brooklyn slept next to Victoria. She said, "Come sleep on the bed with me." And I said, "Absolutely not." I slept with my head facing the door because I was paranoid someone was going to steal him. As Victoria shared, the paranoia was warranted. We were getting kidnapping threats right from when we had Brooklyn, and you can't even explain how that feels because we couldn't hide.
Imagine having a baby and having death threats.
The unrelenting hate that David Beckham faced after his actions in the 1998 World Cup didn't just leave him fearing for his family's safety, it also took a real toll on his mental health. He revealed in his documentary, "I felt very vulnerable and alone." Victoria Beckham added she believes he was absolutely clinically depressed because of the non-stop bullying, and David himself told The Telegraph that, in retrospect, he agrees. "I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I was living day to day thinking about what was coming next. People were saying I should leave the country. It was tough." However, he never sought help at the time because he was taught to put his head down and keep going. "It's something I would never admit because I was brought up by a dad who, if I said, 'Dad, I'm feeling a bit low today,' he'd have said, 'Boy, get on with it.'" David also revealed in 2006 that he has obsessive-compulsive disorder. He said he had tried to stop his obsessions, like needing everything in his closet to be organized by type and color, but it didn't work. In the documentary, he admitted it's tiring and shared, "When everyone's in bed, I then go round, clean the candles, turn the lights on to the right setting, make sure everywhere is tidy." David Beckham's star continued to rise on and off the pitch, thanks to his showbiz connections by way of his wife, Victoria Beckham, aka Posh Spice. But then Manchester United head coach Sir Alex Ferguson was more of a traditional coach, who lived and breathed soccer. According to The Athletic, he dismissed David's brand endorsements and fledgling fashion career. The pair clashed as David continued to pursue interests beyond soccer, and their relationship worsened. In 2000, David donned a hat to avoid showing Ferguson his shaved head, a moment the coach remembered in his book, My Autobiography. Ferguson wrote, "At the time I was starting to despair of him. I could see him being swallowed up by the media or publicity agents." In 2003, things boiled over when Ferguson called Beckham out following a loss. Beckham said in his documentary that he gave it right back to the coach.
And then I swore, I said the F word. And then I saw him change. And I was like, I really shouldn't have said that.
In anger, Ferguson kicked a boot at David's face. The next time David was seen in public, he was sporting a bandage over his eye.
I kicked the boot, hit him in the head. I mean, honestly, it was an absolute freak.
The blowout fight meant that Sir Alex Ferguson wanted David Beckham gone for good. This was understandable. What was hard for Beckham to swallow was the manner in which Ferguson treated him. For example, as he was on the outs, Beckham's coach told him he wouldn't be starting in a key Champions League game. Beckham walked away upon hearing the news and was surprised that Ferguson didn't react. He said, "If the gaffer had still cared about me as a person or as a player, we'd have had a row there and then. He wouldn't have let me walk away from him like that." Beckham only learned that Manchester United had sold him to another club, Real Madrid, through the media. Victoria. Recalling a conversation with Manchester United executive Peter Kenyon, he said, "I called Peter Kenyon and said, 'Is this true?' And he said, 'Yes.' I said, 'Can I speak to the manager?' He said, 'No.'" For Beckham, who called Ferguson a father figure, it was devastating to have his coach ice him out. He said, "It obviously hurt. I couldn't watch United for 3 years on the TV." Rumours of a marriage on the rocks started in 2003 after David Beckham relocated his family to Spain to join his new team, Real Madrid. David was spotted out in Spain at a nightclub with a brunette, later identified as his personal assistant, Rebecca Luz. Shortly afterward, the UK's News of the World newspaper ran a story claiming David had an affair with Luz. Though he denied all accusations, she claimed the two had an affair, saying, "I think the chemistry between David and I was so strong, and people were not happy because I was being very unprofessional, and he's a married man." It was a difficult time for David and his wife Victoria. He told BBC Radio 5 Live, "The way I and my family have been treated is an absolute disgrace." He and Victoria ended up suing the News of the World for defamation.
It was the hardest period for us because it felt like the world was against us. And here's the thing, we were against each other.
Luz came out after the documentary to slam it as misleading propaganda.
Just really bothered me at the little angle at how he'd played the narrative and how misleading it is. And
when the Beckhams moved to the United States, it was a wonderful opportunity for Victoria to grow her brand, but David was miserable playing for the Los Angeles Galaxy. In 2023, he told The Times of the MLS, "It wasn't professional like it is now." When David spent some time on loan with AC Milan, it left his Galaxy teammate Landon Donovan furious.
It's a little MLS team that he doesn't really care about, but it meant a lot to me.
While David understood Donovan, he didn't appreciate the public criticism. "I don't think he handled it in the right way. Whatever goes on in the changing room stays in the changing room." David Beckham is no stranger to car accidents. He and his eldest son Brooklyn walked away unharmed from a 2013 fender bender, but in November 2014, they were involved in a much more dangerous crash. The two were leaving Arsenal's training centre in London Colney, England, when another vehicle hit theirs at full speed. David's car had its driver's side door smashed in, while the other car was totaled. Debris littered the ground, and the car's hood was completely demolished, with its front bumper hanging on the ground. Brooklyn walked away unscathed, while his dad was treated at the scene for an injury to his shoulder. A source told The Telegraph the airbags saved the two from serious injury. They were shaken. It was quite a heavy prang at quite a speed, but everybody walked away uninjured. In 2020, Beckham mourned the sudden loss of his friend Kobe Bryant, whom he had met during his time in Los Angeles. Beckham wrote of his friend, "Words won't ever be enough to describe how I am feeling after the tragic loss of Kobe. This was one special athlete, husband, father and friend." Beckham was similarly shaken up by actor Matthew Perry's death in October 2023. The two had previously connected through social media, so the loss hit him particularly hard. Beckham posted on Instagram, "It's just so sad. We'll miss this laugh." David Beckham is no stranger to online mockery, but while the comments are mostly meant to be a light-hearted roasting of the soccer pro, it's clear he's also an easy target for people who just want to lash out. One such example occurred in June 2022, when Beckham took to Instagram to celebrate Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee, writing, "70 years of service and inspirational leadership of our country. Let's come together and commemorate her remarkable reign with a great British party these next few days." It was an innocent post, and yet the comments were scathing. Followers mocked Beckham, with one writing, "You're not getting a knighthood, just let it go." And critics weren't all kind to his Netflix documentary. The Telegraph's Alan Tyers called the doc schmaltzy PR that exposes him as a hypocrite, and harshly proclaimed, "It is all stuff we already knew, or stuff we did not want to know anyway."